Number 6. The Lost City of Tikal. In January 2023, archaeologists in Guatemala unearthed the secrets of one of the most enigmatic cities from pre-Columbian America. This was no ordinary city. It was the ancient Maya city of Tikal, which peaked during the late Classic period between the 6th and 8th centuries AD. But as we all know, the Mayas mysteriously abandoned this city around the year 900 AD for reasons unknown. But a new discovery has just shed some light on the decline and fall of this once great metropolis. This was not the first time that Tikal had been excavated. However, in fact, excavations at the site began way back in the early 1970s. Sadly, we don't have the answer to that. The story of Tikal stretches back thousands of years before the birth of Christ. Then around the year 1000 BC, they were joined by the ancestors of the modern Maya. The newcomers settled down and started farming the land while also building small villages. By 200 BC, these settlements grew into a large city. Between the years 770 and 900 AD, Tikal experienced a gradual decline, eventually succumbing to drought, famine, and warfare. By the 10th century, the city was completely abandoned. No one knows exactly what caused this downfall, but we do know that Teotihuacan had something to do with it. The answer may lie in the discovery of another ancient city in El Pilar, which was occupied by the Maya between 200 BC and 1000 AD. In 2017, archaeologists used ground-penetrating radar to scan beneath the ruins. If left unchecked, they could have marched south and subjugated the neighboring city. That's why Teotihuacan decided to crush them once and for all. The burning of the forests around Tikal is just one piece of evidence that supports this theory. Another is the Maya murals, depicting battles with bearded warriors wearing quilted cotton armor. This was the trademark attire of the Tepantitla warriors, a fierce fighting force from central Mexico. They found a large structure that measured 1,700 feet long by 600 feet wide. What's even more fascinating is that the two cities faced each other directly across the Usumacinta River. According to National Geographic, Tikal's main entrance was aligned with the cardinal directions, precisely facing El Pilar's royal palace. This lends credence to the idea that there was once a friendly relationship between the two cities, but that turned sour and devolved into bitter conflict. Considering its size and strategic location at the heart of the ancient city, researchers believed that it was the palace of the king. Who knows what other secrets are hidden beneath the ancient ruins? Maybe someday we'll find out what caused the great civilizations of the ancient world to collapse. And now we have proof that they destroyed the once great city of Tikal. At the time, it was called Yaxchilan, meaning green stones. In February 2023, shocking new details emerged about the decline and fall of Tikal. Researchers analyzed pollen trapped in sediment layers preserved at the site. Their findings showed that during the 8th century AD, there was a sudden increase in charcoal deposits and a decrease in pollen from tropical plants. In other words, the same architectural designs were being used hundreds of miles apart at two different cities. But how could this be possible? The only plausible explanation is that there was some kind of cultural exchange between the two cities, perhaps in the form of diplomatic missions or royal marriages. But something happened to disrupt the alliance and turn into a bitter rivalry. We don't know what that something was, but we do know that it ended badly. This indicated a massive forest fire that must have swept through the region. But when the city reached its peak, 600 years later, it was known as Tikal. This suggested that the burning of vegetation may have been deliberate. The theory is that, when Teotihuacan invaded Tikal, they set fire to the jungle to create a defensive buffer zone around the city. This would prevent the Maya from launching surprise attacks from the surrounding rainforest. It also served as a warning to other local city-states not to side with the enemy. At its peak, It was a huge Maya metropolis boasting 3 magnificent pyramids, dozens of temples and palaces, as well as a royal court that rivaled those of the Aztecs and Inca. All of this was located deep within the jungles of northern Guatemala, about 400 miles east of Mexico City. But let's take a closer look at this lost city of the Mayas, so you can understand how incredible this discovery really is. Back then, archaeologists were baffled by what they found. The team leader, archaeologist Edwin Ramand Ramirez, says that the discovery of a clay figurine suggests that Tikal may have been absorbed into the larger Teotihuacan Empire through conquest. Ramirez and his colleagues also believe that the conquered people of Tikal were unnecessarily killed off or enslaved. According to these carvings, Tikal was founded by the gods. This was due to several favorable factors, including a stable climate, access to trade routes, and a plentiful food supply. The population grew rapidly, and soon Tikal had become a major center of commerce, religion, and culture. The royal palace complex was expanded, temples were constructed, and enormous pyramids were erected. To this day, they remain the tallest man-made structures in the entire country. The rulers claimed to be descendants of these deities, and they were responsible for maintaining the balance between the natural and supernatural worlds. They did this by waging war on neighboring city-states, collecting tribute, and spreading their influence throughout the region. This expansion continued until the 5th century AD, when Tikal became the dominant power in the Maya world. Instead, the Maya rulers and their families were probably taken to the capital of Teotihuacan, where they lived out the remainder of their days in luxury. This theory seems to be backed up by evidence from other Mesoamerican cultures such as the who willingly integrated into the empire and even adopted Nahuatl, the language of their conquerors. Of course, this doesn't mean that there wasn't any resistance. Archaeologists have discovered evidence that the locals fought back against their oppressors. Unfortunately, this part of history will likely never be fully known, since the conquered people didn't leave behind any written records. According to National Geographic, he said, quote, "It's an icon of power and subjugation. It shows us how the political dynamic changed, because now it is clear Teotihuacan had military force. The site was transformed from a Maya city into a satellite colony of Teotihuacan. Among the ruins, they uncovered over 100 ceramic vessels, stamped with the symbol of the ruling elite from another ancient civilization, the classic Maya. These symbols depicted the rulers of the Maya city of Teotihuacan, who lived almost 1,000 miles away. It was a real head-scratcher for historians, because it meant that Teotihuacan must have controlled Tikal at some point in the distant past. But nobody could figure out why. Now, more than half a century later, researchers believe they may have finally solved this mystery. But wait, there's more. The biggest question still is why Teotihuacan decided to conquer Tikal in the first place. Number 5. The rise of a Maya metropolis. Originally, the area was occupied by a small tribe of nomadic hunters and gatherers. Much of what we know about the city comes from deciphering glyphs inscribed on stelae, which are tall stone slabs with carvings on them. But it was during the next 2 centuries that the city flourished like never before. Sadly, the good times didn't last. For a history of bloodshed. But that's not all. They also discovered that around the same time there was a sharp rise in pollen from desert plants. But why did Teotihuacan want to conquer Tikal in the first place? What makes this discovery significant is that the royal residence at El Pilar was practically identical to the palace complex at Tikal. By the late 7th century, the Maya of Tikal had grown so powerful that they became a threat to the very existence of El Pilar. Another detail worth mentioning is that both Tikal and El Pilar were built on the same grid plan, suggesting that they were laid out according to the same design. And now we have proof that Tikal was burned to the ground and destroyed by their enemies. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos like these.